At Hasbro specifically, we have servers that are basically connected worldwide to all of the employees and things like that. And whenever we finish a design, we upload it to the server, and then we share those server links around. So we're not using traditional methods to share designs and files. We're not using Dropbox. It's actually not even allowed. Like any computer that comes directly from Hasbro, if you try to type in dropbox.com, it's not going to work.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Only Lawsuits podcast, where we cover lawsuits going on around the country and how they tie into moments in pop culture. Today, we have a true OG, good friend of Mike and I. Cezar is the senior graphic designer at Hasbro, and he runs his own creative agency called CZ Designs. Mr. Cezar Arvelo.
Yo.
What's going on, man? What's going on?
You know, I had to pull up on the boys.
Yeah, well, dude. So we're going to start this off with IP.
Cool. Yeah.
And IP protection. So before you get started on your experience, Cezar, Mike, why don't you get us?
So intellectual property, it is obviously it's something that's very important. It's been around for years, right? Why is it important? Well, there's a lot of things that allow people to create things. Cezar, you're a creator. We've used you to help create some of our graphics for the law firm, right? Obviously, like as a law firm owner, as a business owner, I don't want people to use my and then go and brand their stuff, right? So it's where like intellectual property stuff really comes into play. Now, obviously, we're a small firm. We don't really have too much to worry about per se, but big companies like Tesla, these other big companies that really do put their name and their brand out there, the things they create, their names, it's very important, right? There's four main ways that you can protect yourself through the U.S. Patent Office or trademark. There's like a law. It's like the Copyright Act or something like that, right? I'm not a IP lawyer, but this is what IP lawyers mainly deal with. So there's obviously trademarks, there's copyrights, there's patents, and there's trade secrets, right? So I don't litigate these issues too much, but I do know a little bit about them. For instance, with patents, when you want to create things, you gotta, formally put it out there and say, hey, this is what I'm creating. This is what it does. This is how you make it. The dimensions, you literally have to put a whole application in. And what does it do? It protects your creation for a certain amount of time. It becomes your exclusive right. Because what happens is once you create something and it's in the public sphere, they're going to go go down Canal Street, right? You see all these super luxury brands, and then you see the people, Rolex. So it's one of those things where you realize whereas you go and buy a fake Rolex on Canal Street for $200 that looks exactly like a real one that costs $15,000, you realize why it's so important to have intellectual property rights.
One example I've read about and I've actually seen, and you can maybe delve into it a bit, Mike, is with the self-autonomous vehicles, right? That Uber, Google, and Apple were at one point all developing in tandem, and there were a lot of lawsuits going on in the back end because designers for these autonomous vehicles were switching between each of the companies, and each of these companies were trying to protect the IP rights and the technology behind or the technology they developed for each of these autonomous vehicles.
So that goes into one of the four protected areas, which is trade secret, right? So look, in law, we deal with, when I sue someone, technically I can go after and poke and pry into private stuff, anything that is quote unquote relevant pursuant to the rules of discovery in Florida, right? So one of the things that other lawyers will do is they will literally go and object and try to block us because of trade secret. And that's what you're getting into. What trade secret is, it's when you have a piece of knowledge or a piece of a company that like is specifically designed for and paid for by that company, and it's so like distinct that you don't want it to get out, because if it gets out, it's going to basically like destroy the company's, ability to do it. Everyone's going to copy and paste that code, right? So that's what trade secrets are. And yeah, there were a lot. I mean, I wasn't too familiar with all the lawsuits going on, but I do know the concept behind it is, look, when you as a company, I mean, think about it this way, right? If when Tesla, SpaceX, I mean, we talk about Elon all the time and how smart he is. When SpaceX created that ability for the rocket to land back and like reuse itself, think of how much money one reuse saves that company, right? And think of, the concept of going back to the space race when we were racing to the moon. What was one of the biggest issues for countries? It was the cost to design and get a space program to compete, with one another, right? So like, did we land on the moon? We don't know, right? Some people say yes, some people say no. I mean, I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but listen, we haven't been back. So
true.
Like, I don't know. And let me ask you this. How the hell did we get such a clean video feed from the moon back then?
Well, we've been able to get pretty clean video feeds,
dude,
throughout history.
I'll be in the middle of the ocean.
Depending on the camera system.
I'll be in the middle of the ocean, and only until recently was I able to like satellite phone off my cell phone, bro.
Well, it is kind of funny that every time you see footage of any sort of unidentified flying object, it's the most low quality video possible. But you are right. But going back to the 60s when camera technology was very old, you have the most clear footage of Neil Armstrong walking on the moon. So,
Yeah.
But this is a good segue, Cesar. So you've had an amazing career in graphic design. Throughout like the past decade and a half, you've worked with some of the biggest brands and worked on some of the biggest franchises. So what's your experience with dealing with each of like these IPs and the protections these companies utilize in order to protect them from getting out to the general public?
With the companies that I've worked for, right, they're companies that already have all of their protections in place. What I've noticed, the most popular thing to do is they just license out their IPs. So they, let people have the rights to sell different consumer products based on their characters. So for example, like Hasbro, they bought Saban brands, so now they have all the IP rights to Power Rangers. Right now, in this moment, they're not necessarily building new Power Rangers products or entertainment. So they're just giving licensing rights, the IP rights, to a bunch of different vendors so that they can create their own products, their own games.
Megazords.
Yeah, stuff like that. So
hell yeah, dude.
So, working within these companies, that's the most popular route that I've seen them take. And then working with my personal clients, the first thing that they do is they have all of the rights to their name, their brand, and where I come in is I just make sure that I give them as many original assets that, they can then copyright, they can protect themselves with, make sure that, any type of font licenses are, the actual license are 100% for use for, commercial, things like that. So that's essentially, where I come in, is just make sure that these assets are 100% original, make sure that they can legally copyright them, And then, and that's basically game on.
So you recently have been working on a lot of Transformers related stuff.
Yeah.
And that is a huge franchise, right? Recent movie that came out that did really well at the box office. You work on a lot of stuff in regards to the toy lines. But it's really important for a brand like Hasbro, especially being a toy company as well, to protect the assets being created before the general public gets to see them. Yeah. So what does the infrastructure on that back end look like where, you know, they have these designers working on a lot of like these major franchises and they're trying not to get any leaks, right? Because that's a big issue nowadays, right? With like security constantly being breached at these companies.
Yeah. It's at at Hasbro specifically, we have a very thick, we have a content service portal, and every time that I need to, let's say, get a logo, and I'm not going to Google and typing in Autobots icon, like we go into their servers, their back end, and we make sure that we're only downloading assets from that content service portal.
Yeah, because that's their stuff.
Right. So anything in there is definitely fully protected. It's legit. And like it's good for us to use. Let's say I'm working on a design. I'm not going to recreate the Autobots icon. Like, let's say I don't have that file on my computer, but I want to put it inside this poster. I'm not going to go to Google and just type that in. I'm going to download it from their official server, and then it's good to go. Also, we have servers that are basically connected worldwide to all of the employees and things like that. And whenever we finish a design, we upload it to the server, and then we share those server links around. So we're not using traditional methods to share designs and files. We're not using Dropbox. It's actually not even allowed. Like any computer that comes directly from Hasbro, if you try to type in Dropbox.com, it's not going to work.
That's cool.
Yeah. So our IT department is extremely they're very good at what they do. They can put certain things on your computer where, websites won't work. Traditional methods of sharing. If, websites have anything malicious, like it just won't pop up.
Yeah.
And that's how they protect their stuff from leaking out. Now, from the fan perspective, that's a whole different story. We can't like tell fans, not to do what they do. They'll go to events in, let's say, like China, because sometimes we'll release information and artwork and leaks. We'll leak it ourselves out in different countries first. And there's fans that they're able to get that information first, and then they bring it to the US before we schedule to put it out. So that happens all the time. They're not always negative. Sometimes it actually helps build hype for the stuff that we're doing. And that's kind of like, the base of it.
One question I have for you is, obviously, look, like I've known you for a long time, right? And I've seen your like creative ability for a long time. I know you've worked on like you worked on some musicians CD covers, I believe.
Yeah.
I've seen some. I love some of your work. I've had you work on my own stuff. But one of the things that I'd like to ask is, how do you feel when you create something? Because it's like it's like your baby, right? You create there. You sat and create this, and then basically it's out there in the world, and you can't really say, "Oh, this is mine" per se, because it's Hasbro's or it's Mike's or it's this. How does that make you feel? What's your reaction?
It's always positive. I like seeing your work out in the real world is the best feeling, in my opinion, for myself. And I know a lot of designers love seeing their stuff out in the real world, because it's an honor. At the end of the day, as a designer, your goal is to visually communicate the client's vision. You know, it's not about your artwork per se. You do have your own creative spin on everything you touch, but at the end of the day, your job is to make the end user, the end client, successful by your, you know, creative visuals. So it's an honor to see it out there, to see it being used. You know, I have clients that to this day, 10, 12 years later, are still using my logos. And yeah, no, it's an amazing feeling. It's honestly why I do what I do, you know, to just continue building the, you know, what the next generation is seeing, you know, building brands that actually last, that stand the test of time, you know, timeless brands. And there's a lot of timeless brands that exist.
You see, I think that's interesting, right? And I think the reason I asked that question is to kind of go into the different industries within the creative realm, right? I think the artist industry, the way you just described it, is very, very unique, because when you look at musicians, totally different landscape. You know, we were talking a little bit earlier. We were watching a video a YouTuber did on Kanye West when he was making All Falls Down. Right, it went into how, you know, originally he sampled a Lauryn Hill album, a Lauryn Hill song, and that they had to recreate even the minor things like the guitar strum or the vocals. The vocal is not actually, although it's, you know, Lauryn Hill's lyrics pretty much, it's Selena Johnson that actually created the song. And literally this YouTuber went into it and was like, you know, you gotta, just to comply with IP and trademark, copyright, stuff like that, you gotta go in and like change certain things. But it's like, imagine Lauryn Hill didn't agree to let Kanye use it. Like, theoretically, Lauryn Hill could have allowed that absolute banger to never see the light of day. But Kanye, like, still went that extra step and took his artistic creativity to make it and put it out there in the world. Now, how does Kanye feel if someone were to do the same thing to his song? That's an interesting thing that I'd love to hear. But, you know, I think it goes to show, like, different artists, like, they want to monetize their craft as much as possible. Like you said, look, this is your product. Do what you will with it. I'm just happy to see it out there in the world. I think that's an amazing perspective. Whereas certain musicians, you know, and I'm not trying to shine a negative light on any musician per se, because this is their thing. But I think it's just to see their music on certain pieces would be great. You know, like, look at Madonna and Deadpool. You know, Ryan Reynolds had to go to Madonna's house to actually get her to agree to use that song. And supposedly, like, Madonna has never allowed anyone to use the song. But so I think we've all seen Deadpool and Wolverine. Like, that fight sequence with, you know, Like a Prayer was amazing. Like, hands down, perfectly put together. But to think one person can have stopped millions from enjoying that, you know, it's crazy.
I think it's a fine line between the business and artistry. So at the end of the day, artists, designers, they are disruptors of the industry. And I know there's like a really interesting story with I think the guy who invented the Game Boy. He didn't want he invented the Game Boy and he wanted Nintendo to use it. I think they sued him, but they eventually took it, and then it turned into, like, you know, the biggest thing ever.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think IP protections are in place, you know, the legalities are in place, but I do feel like as a creator, you kind of have to walk that fine line and break boundaries. There's a lot of artists that they use licensed characters, you know, they'll call it fan art.
Yeah.
But there's potential that they will get discovered by the major company and get either hired or they'll get official collaborations. That happens a lot. Yeah. I mean, you know, at Hasbro, we own a lot of different brands. One of the bigger ones is Monopoly. And there's this guy named Alec Monopoly. I don't know what his back end looks like or anything, but all he does is do street art with the Monopoly guy.
Oh, I think I've seen some of his work.
Yeah. And And Hasbro just hired him for a recent project. So yeah, it
Very
it
cool.
just happens that way.
It's pretty interesting because, like Mike talked about with Kanye, with that song, there are ways around getting the actual intellectual property, right? So in Kanye's case with Selena Johnson, even though Lauryn Hill didn't give him the rights to use that song in All Falls Down, because it was a cover and he altered some stuff, it made the process like a lot easier. He made it
its own piece of art, right? And like there was a project we did in law school, right? It was like my 1L year, and it was we got it was like our writing assignment for the year, and it was like we had to argue the legality or illegality of the use of a cat in like a meme, right? And so it's like the fair use doctrine, and we went into I don't even remember 90% of this shit right now, but I'll always remember it because it's like, one way or the other, there's a benefit to taking something and modifying it and putting it out there into the world, right? Because like, look, I'm not a creative person. That's one of the reasons why I team up with Josh. Like, Josh is he helps me bring what I'd love to see out there to a reality for my business and for, everything we do as a business partners as well. But to what I've seen is, look, there's certain things that we want to get out there, and look, we want people to use it. We want this thing to be bigger than it is, because it's kind of like that legacy. And I think when you see certain people just kind of block it and fight that it really hampers the impacts you could have. It's just crazy to me to think that certain artists don't want their stuff to get out there. But
yeah, I think it's getting, with the rise of social media and the way people express themselves, it's getting so big to the point where these big companies, they've just given up on blocking things, where they're just like, you know what, use our brand, do your creative expression. We're going to embrace it. And that actually encourages other creators to do more with that brand. And I feel like the end result is actually positive.
Yeah, I think it grows the brand more, right? Yeah. Because look, for instance, if you have someone, the one great thing about technology that I'll say is it's removed that middleman. Right now, it's like it's direct to consumer, baby. Like, we can literally, like you said, there's creators that use Hasbro's stuff and fan art, and they get opportunities. I think that on itself is amazing, right? Because before, how would that person have gotten the opportunity to pursue their dream and actually maximize Hasbro's marketability, right? They would have had to go through an agent or look, and deal with lawyers and this and the other. No, it shouldn't be that complicated, right? It should be to where you can go out there, and if you're passionate about something, because look, we talk about AI, right? And we talked about where the next part we're going to get into is AI impacting creativity and creators and the legalities of it. The one thing AI will never be is human, right? And as smart as AI is, there are certain things that the human brain can do that none of us really understand, that it just creates such amazing things,
And on your end, that's a great next segue, right? Mm-hmm. Because look, you as a designer, you like we talked about, you've been in the industry for a decade and a half. So now that you see AI and the capabilities, how quickly those capabilities have progressed over the last year, with not only it creating art assets at a baseline, but also being able to create music, being able to now create video. What's your perspective as a creative on AI? And a second follow-up to that is the AI is using actual artist work as inspiration to come up with the assets that it creates, right? So what's your perspective on that as well?
So Okay, to answer the first part of your question, I feel like as an artist, as a creative person, you just have to get to a point where, you know, if you don't get on the train, like, you're going to get left behind. So you have to embrace it in your own unique way. Like, I guess as an example I can think of is during the Drake and Kendrick beef. Like, Drake made a song where, you know, he got the whole West Coast to diss Kendrick using like an AI Tupac or like a AI Snoop Dogg or whoever he used. So yeah, that's an example of him as an artist embracing that. I am embracing it, but I'm also, you know, I still have that creative pride where I want my work to be as original as possible. So the way that I personally use it is I'll use it in the conceptual phase, but I won't necessarily use it for the end use case. Right now, AI, you know, sometimes I do designs that will go on billboards, large format prints. Like, AI at this point isn't at that point where it's making print ready, print production files. Yeah. So, you know, we have that at this point, but
you still need to tweak it. Like, it can lay that base foundation, but you still got to tweak it.
Yeah. No, it's definitely, it's useful for concepts, mood boards, putting across an idea, you know, quickly to clients. But at the end of the day, you know, what you were talking about earlier, you have to have that human aspect in order for it to be original. At this point in my career, I'm not using AI for any of my final designs. I'm still doing everything from scratch, but I don't know. I don't know how far the technology can go. And all I know is I have to continue, you know, keeping my finger on the pulse and seeing what's coming up next and making sure that I understand how this stuff works.
Yeah. So one of the things that I've seen is, you know, obviously, like, I use AI in our field, and there's a fear that, like, AI is going to replace us, you know, but I'll tell you right now, like, I know how to write, you know, damn good motions, legal memorandums, so on and so forth. AI can't format and properly put things the way that I would. And, you know, as far as I know, AI hasn't won a court case and actually rendered a jury verdict. How can AI read nonverbal communication from a jury? How can AI read this? How can AI read that? You know, so I think we're still safe for a while, but ultimately AI will step in. But the way I look at it is, look, AI will always need human oversight, because without the prompt, without our brains prompting it, how is it going to properly create something that we're actually creating in our head? You know, right. Funniest thing is, like, I'm a Toyota fanatic, right? I love my Toyotas. I love my Lexuses. You know, so when I wanted to test the picture generation from, I think it was ChatGPT, and I was like, you know, Tundra towing a boat, and I'll never forget this, bro. It like, I put 2022 Tundra towing a boat, and I'm expecting it to, like, make something looking like my truck towing a boat, right? And just like what I got was like not even a 2022, it was like a 2018, and it was like shaped into a boat, and I was like, what the
Well, it's pretty interesting, right? Because AI, as much as it's advanced over the last few years, like you said, it still needs humans' input in order for it to create anything. And I think that's the power that we still have, which is it requires human input in order to create anything tangibly useful. Because even when you go through programs like DALL-E, programs like Midjourney, if the prompts are somehow off, you get a completely wacky end result. And with like photos that it creates, hands are sometimes feet.
Yeah.
People's faces are distorted. The videos that have now been inundating social media, like showing at the very, very outset, you think it's a real video, but as it goes on, you're like, wow, like this is AI. It looks AI generated.
Yeah. I mean,
I was going to say, from a legal perspective, I know, like you said, only the human aspect of that creation can be copyrighted, but the AI generated stuff can't. Just from my research, you have to attribute what was AI, what was human generated. So, yeah, like I guess for artists, if you are using AI, tweak it as much as possible. Paint over it. Make sure that it lives within a bigger body of work. So, for example, if you're going to use AI images inside of, let's say, a picture novel, make sure all that writing is original, and have the AI images to support the bigger brand. And like just to further what you were talking about, there's court cases out there that prove there was literally a case that PETA brought, and it was where there was a monkey that like grabbed a camera, took a selfie, and evidently I didn't read the case all the way. I just kind of glanced through some topics, but it was a monkey that took this selfie, and PETA brought a lawsuit on behalf of the monkey, saying the monkey had like intellectual property rights to the photo. And while we're very we care about the animals a lot here, R.I.P. Peanut and Fred and Harambe, the court said you have to like be a human to have intellectual property. Yeah.
Right. And I thought that was really interesting. And then there was another court case where they talked about, I forgot what it went through entirely. Mine kind of went blank, but it did distinguish that you need that human element. Like you can't have like a computer that says, oh, the way the law is written now, it needs to be human to have intellectual property, protections. So,
yeah.
I think the law is also, really, really important in crafting that. But, good thing like we had that monkey case, and these sorts of cases come around because, dude, imagine if like legislators were using AI to write these 1,000-page laws, and then the AI just snuck in there like, if an image is created by a intellectual being or something like that.
I think the only issue that I have primarily is that what I've seen happen is there are artists that are passing off AI work as their own.
Oh, yeah.
And to me, it makes no sense.
Yeah.
Their argument is that only I could prompt the AI to do this. And although like there's a certain reasoning behind it, I can't really reward somebody taking 15 seconds to type in a prompt on a keyboard and then just reprompting it constantly in order to get like the end result that they want.
And that's the artist in you talking.
But so, and I'll argue with you from the other perspective though. Like, look, like for me, for instance, right? Like if I wanted to create some of the assets that we've created, and I'm just like, yo, type it into ChatGPT or whatever it is, and it gives me something, and it kind of does the same job. I'm like, does it make sense? Can you argue with me for still having the same concept, but just not using a creator like yourself that hands down puts way more into it than the AI can, but the overall concept is still seemingly the same, You're
talking about it from a business use case where it's like, at the end of the day, you're generating whatever it is, art, content, to propel your business to that next stage. Because at the that art that you generate or whatever piece of content that you generate, that doesn't necessarily, that's not the bulk of your business.
Yeah.
What Josh is talking about, which I'm on his side on this, is there are people making a business, making a living off of the generation of that art.
And saying it's theirs.
And that's a little bit more of a taboo subject, especially when, you know, it has a specific style that other artists have, you know, taken decades to perfect.
I can see that.
And,
so I can see that now. Cause basically you like the best way I guess I can kind of relay it is you're taking credit as a creator that's basically stealing from the creativity of others, and you're not able to produce any of that shit.
Exactly. Well, one feature that I love recently that Instagram added, if it even detects any AI, it'll literally call you out. It'll say AI info. So as soon as someone sees that, people are going to say, oh yeah, boom, that's AI. And for example, like I've used Photoshop's generative fill just to fill in like 10 pixels of a patch of grass because my photo didn't fill the frame and it said AI generated. And I was like, oh, hell no. Like, I don't want them to call me out on something that, like, you know, it's a picture of like me and my family or whatever.
But, you know, to drive your point home, Cezar, I'm okay with utilizing AI tools for that because, you know, as people who use Photoshop and Lightroom, they're extremely powerful features in order to help communicate the end image that we're trying to provide for ourselves or for a client. Issues that I have, though, are companies like Coca-Cola, who recently spent, I think it was like $500,000 on an AI video company to create all of their new holiday video ads.
Yeah.
Right. And the videos themselves are all completely AI generated.
Wow.
So I think like they're using it as a testing ground to see like how far they could push the boundaries of that. But it's a good segue into somebody that is really utilizing AI and wants to start his own AI video company, Mr. Elon Musk, right? So you work for Hasbro.
Yep.
And Elon has recently shown interest in potentially purchasing Hasbro or Wizards of the East Coast for the Dungeons and Dragons IP. So the Hasbro stock has gone up a bit.
Yep.
And what's your perspective on Elon getting involved?
So, you know, you guys heard Elon is like the #1 Diablo player.
Yeah. Huge gamer.
Huge gamer.
He's like a real world Ready Player One dude.
Yeah, and that's a good reference. I mean, to me, it's crazy that with as busy as he is running Doge, the Department of the Department of Government Efficiency, Tesla, SpaceX, and X, formerly Twitter, and somehow he finds time to also be the #1 player in a video game. So that guy, that's fucking insane.
Yeah. No, I mean, you know, from what the recent news is saying is he's trying to turn X into a gaming company, an AI gaming company. I don't even know what that looks like, what that would even, you know, be. But as far as the Hasbro stuff, Dungeons and Dragons, you know, he wants, Elon, he's known to be against the woke mind virus, right? So this is my kind of like deep cut take where a lot of these brands like Dungeons and Dragons, like they've kind of, you know, gone in with the times. I know they've had some like transgender characters, things like that. And Elon, from, you know, some of the stuff that I've seen him kind of be against, you know, I can see him saying, listen, I'm going to buy this brand, kind of, you know, fighting back against his beliefs in order to, you know, make these games what they used to be, or, you know, what he thinks
just make it to its original form. And I mean it, but so here, like, I see it, and when I was reading into this I was kind of trying to figure out like why buy Dungeons and Dragons, you know, other than Stranger Things. I never really like played the game. I don't know shit about it, but from what I understand, he was trying to really preserve the original authenticity of it, in that the like, and it goes to say, like I was talking to Josh earlier, sometimes that is actually, you know, a good thing, Toyota went and they sued and really like utilized their protections a while back. But there was a company that was making body kits for the Toyota 2000 GT. It's one of Toyota's first supercars. It was
one of the most iconic cars.
It's one of the most iconic Japanese sports cars you'll ever have. You know, the 60s obviously created some beautiful sports cars, and the Toyota 2000 GT, like if there's one car I would love to just have sitting in my garage, it would be that. It's a beautiful vehicle. And you know, Toyota, like really, there were people, number one, creating a Frankenstein of taking like a Datsun and throwing this weird body kit on it. And I thought like that shit should be shut down, right? But because like, number one, it's a Datsun, you know, it's just not the same company. But like, I think if there was a way I don't think it would be right if someone were to go and like take a Mark IV Supra, for instance, and make it into the same body structure of a 2000 GT. I think that would be like an art form, but evidently I think Toyota is like even hammering down on shit like that. So it's like, to a certain extent, I get it. You want to keep that original authenticity to preserve it.
Yeah.
But you also have to allow for that, like to kind of create something and pay homage to the original as much as possible and grow and expand. Because like, look, I wish I could have a 2000 GT, but I think the last one sold for like a few $1 million. And as you know, the inner Brown in me is just not going to ever let me pay that much for it.
You know, essentially you can hear the passion in your voice. You can hear that you are a fan of, you know, this car, this model, these brands, and taking your passion into people that are in love with all these different IPs. You're a purist, and a lot of people are purists of these childhood brands.
Yeah.
And companies, they're just trying to, you know, get with the times, change main characters, change storylines. And I think a lot of companies have realized, like, we just got to listen to the fans.
Yeah.
You know, so I think from Elon's perspective, he's trying to come into Hasbro to save it as a true fan. I'm assuming this is his intention. So yeah, that's a lot of people would love to see it, but it's also, you know,
he's sort of living every fanboy's ultimate dream, right? Because we all grew up with franchises that we were fans of. And to be in the financial position to say, hey, I want to just buy that franchise outright. Yeah. That's a crazy thing.
But he's buying a lot of things. I'm just saying, like,
dude, he's rumored to be like he made some jokes online that he was going to buy NBC.
Yeah,
dude, that like there's just some shit that I would love to see happen, and MSNBC purchase would be one of them. Yeah. Because to think like I could totally see him. Remember when he bought Twitter, which is now X, he walked in with it was a sink or something, right? Like I forgot why he did it or why he walked in with a sink.
I remember that a little bit. Yeah, I forgot.
But like, I think that would just be hilarious if he just strolls in with like Trump and Rogan and just like kicks down Rachel Maddow's door and says, "Get the fuck out of here." You know, and then Rogan just walks in, swipes her set, and just says, "This is the Joe Rogan experience now."
Well, you know, not to get too political, right? But it's a really, really interesting perspective that I'd also like to get from you.
Yeah.
So you and we've spent over a decade each in both New York and LA, right? Building our careers as creatives. And, you know, finding success in both of those cities. Now that I'm in Orlando and you're in, Florida and you're in Georgia, and these are two more conservative states, right? We we still love the cities, right? We still love the creative energy out there. But what's your perspective on now living in a more conservative state? And how do you feel like you've gotten more conservative as you've gotten older?
Hey man, all three of us, we're fathers. You know?
Yeah.
I mean, look, yeah, fatherhood, parenthood, it will make you just naturally more conservative as you get older, because you just want to, you know, you just want your kids to be protected. Like, you don't want to expose them to too much. But at the end of the day, like, I still need the energy and the creativity of blue cities, of blue states. So what I try to do is, I just try to have a good, healthy balance of both. I do want my kids to just have a childhood, not have to be, exposed to things that kids can just pick up a phone and be exposed to. So, my wife and I were very on top of, like, they don't have a lot of technology in front of their face all the time. They use their imagination, they use their creativity. So I guess that's the conservative part of me. And then, but dad still needs to be at least 15, 20 minutes away from the action. If I can go run into Atlanta, where I currently stay, and just kind of see what's going on, do some networking events. Yeah. Like, I still need to be around that. So yeah, man, it's just a healthy balance. That's all life's about.
It's a good answer, man. That's a good answer. So the last subject. So you're somebody that, through working with Saban, through working with Hasbro, you have been one of the main designers, making sure that the labels on the boxes are on point, right? And making sure that there are no issues before it gets released to get printed for these toy companies. Recently, with the new Wicked movie, they had a set of dolls come out, and on the bottom of the box, or I think the top right-hand corner of the back of the box.
The back panel.
Bottom
right.
Yeah.
And this is Mattel, by the way.
This is Mattel. So Mattel came out with, these dolls for the recently released movie Wicked, based on the Broadway play. And it led to a porn site. Mm-hmm. How does something like that slip through the cracks?
Listen, I don't know how they're doing it over at Mattel. But at Hasbro, yeah, like, I feel like we would have caught that. So, toy packaging, it's a lot more technical than just designing. When you're creating toy packages, like, so I worked on toy packaging for like a solid year. I was working on Disney Frozen toy packaging, a little bit of Raya and the Last Dragon packaging, did some Power Rangers packaging. Once the main elements are designed and created, 90% of that package is all of the legal. It's the barcodes, it's the languages, the multi-languages, because we sell, around the world. All of that has to go through a process. Like, you have to send that package design to like 10 different departments within the company. There's a whole team that all they will do is read the legal on that package. There's a company that all they will do is look at the colors used and, all the assets are correct. There's a team that makes sure that the barcodes are correct. So honestly, I don't know how that happened.
I'll tell you how. Dude was on that website. One of those guys was on the website and autofill kicked in. AI's trying to take that motherfucker's job, dude.
No, I mean, look, things do slip through the cracks. And the way, I know they're pulling a lot of these packages off the shelf. What they would do now, which I've seen this happen at Hasbro, actually, like, we're not perfect, is they will basically recall a lot of these boxes, and they'll do, I don't know the technical term, but like a sticker over the mistake, right? Where they will write the correct website, which I believe is wickedmovie.com, not wicked.com. And they would have to basically do a reprint. And yeah, I think an army of people overseas is just putting that label
That's
over
hilarious.
So that they retain some of that money back.
Well, what's crazy is I think it's funny it happens to a company like Mattel, right? Because they created Barbie.
Yeah.
Or did they create Barbie, or do they just own Barbie? So I think it's funny it happens to them because they make like a super sexual Barbie. Like, who the fuck wants, like, number one, why does Barbie have the proportions she does? That's like crazy, right? And then like I think it's funny now they somehow mistakenly got a porn site involved. I think we need to investigate Mattel, and I'm getting some Abercrombie vibes, dude. There's some going on in Mattel probably.
Listen, tinfoil hat, like I we can go down some rabbit holes, but you know, from my perspective, yeah, I could see this being a human error, but it is still kind of crazy because these packages have to go through a rigorous process. And yeah, this was definitely a human error that, you know, should have been caught.
Yeah, and to me, it was pretty crazy that it did get to the general public.
But it's kind of like common sense, right? Like if you're a company like Mattel and you put out these products for Wicked, do you for 1 minute think like kids that are consuming this product are not going to go to the website wicked.com? You know, like look, when we were in middle school, right? I remember we used to go to the computer labs and we would type in the most innocent website, like, you know, and it would like be blocked because it was something not appropriate for children. So it's like realistically, I think the company should have just used their common sense. You don't even need AI or a damn computer to think about like, I should just own wicked.com. You know, when I started cracking law group, I bought the website crackinglawgroup.com, you know? So it's like, come on, man. Like, you don't even need to be the smartest person to figure this shit out. You shouldn't need people to go and review the colors and the letters. This is just common sense. It's crazy, dude. Crazy.
But that circles back around to IP protection, right? Does the blame get put on the people who created the musical, right? Because I can only assume that the musical is probably older than the porn site, right? And with the designer who made the mistake in Mattel, right? Like, why wasn't he or she more aware of actually placing the proper packaging on the box and maybe doing a little bit of research? Because one thing that I'll say is that it is kind of a weird dynamic with IP protection, because you'll have like fan conventions where you'll have a variety of different artists creating work for different, you know, random artwork for different superheroes or different comic book characters. And these companies like Marvel and DC will just freely allow it because it's getting the IP more out there. But then you brought up a fantastic example of a company like Toyota, right? There are companies like Apple and even a company like Nintendo who are viscerally protective of their IP being showcased in any other light other than the way that they want to portray it. So it's pretty interesting where the guardrails are for each of these companies.
Yeah, and I mean, I get it. Like, look, I wouldn't want someone to use my brand. I've actually literally like I try to make sure my brand is as protected as possible. Whether it's, you know, saying, hey, like, you know, this person is associated with this brand or whatever it is. Like, I try to make sure I distinguish who's associated with me, who I am, because my brand is everything, you know, and I respect it. Like, I respect the fact that I'm sure you wouldn't, you want someone using your private brand, you know, for their use. Same thing with you. You ran photography business for a long time. You know, I wouldn't want to see another Josh Mobijohn with Josh Mobijohn Photography. You know what I'm saying? It's like, it's crazy, but it's just so weird that we have to worry about this shit at the same time. Because it's like when you're stepping in to this game, right? And you're stepping into business and you're stepping into just being a competitor, you want to be an individual, man. I don't want to be compared to other law firms. I want to be an individual. That's what I strive for. Same thing, I'm sure, with you two. You have your craft, your work. I've utilized both your services independently of, now us all working together on stuff. Literally there's a reason I go to you versus someone else, and no matter how much it costs, it's worth the time. It's worth the money. It's priceless because I know what you're capable of. So it's like, I don't understand why people think it's okay to just go and copy and paste because, dude, there's so many people out here. There's so many things that you can do where you can just like build value on yourself and put a product out there that people will support. It's crazy to me.
Yeah. And that's, in this day and age of AI, to kind of put a bow on everything you just said, it's authenticity is the number one thing that every solo, individual artist brand needs to focus on. It's why are you doing the things you're doing? Why are you like, what is the story behind what you're creating? And who is the person behind that? That's why even a lot of these bigger brands that didn't necessarily have faces and they were just putting out stuff with the IPs, like even they're trying to get back to, the messaging, like they're actually investing into influencers. So I think that's the biggest protection against the future is work on your personal brand, make sure that, you have a clear story and a clear motive behind everything that you're putting out there.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's going to set you apart.
Cezar, to wrap it up, man, what are you working on next? And what are you looking forward to working on in 2025?
Listen, I am a man of the people. I'm just servicing a lot of different brands right now through, my company, helping out with, I'm trying to think of what I can say and what I can't. I'm helping.
You have a protein bar on store shelves right now, a Walmart.
Yes. Thank you for mentioning that. So, yes, I've been on a team that's been working on a caffeinated chocolate brand. It's actually truffles.
Okay.
And I did all of the branding for this company, logo, packaging, you name it. And it is available at Walmart now. I think we're in, something like 4,000 Walmarts. I don't know.
I'll put the information
for
all of you up on screen.
Check your local Walmart. It's called Charge Chocolate. And that is a brand that I've been heavily a part of over the last 5 years. As far as the corporate stuff goes, Transformers 1 just released a few months ago. I had a heavy hand in this brand, did a lot of different designs. So I'm slowly putting out those designs into the world, my contributions to that. Now that the movie is officially released, it's out.
Yep.
So right now, honestly, I'm just focusing on what I just said is building my personal brand, finally being able to share, the work that I've been sitting on for years. Cause, IP protection, like we've been talking about, is really important. So I have to sit on work that I'm proud of for years so that I don't break any, IP things over at Hasbro. I don't leak anything myself. So I'm just kind of now curating a lot of the work that I've done over the last couple of years and just putting it out there, building my personal brand, and the future will kind of reveal itself after that. So that's what I'm working on.
Well, brother, man, thank you so much for coming on today. We appreciate all your hard work. Mike and I love everything that you do. Especially me, knowing you for so many years, seeing your journey into like this powerhouse creative, from somebody doing graffiti on abandoned water towers to now working with some of the biggest brands in the game. You're such a G, man.
Thank you, bro.
We love you. Guys, thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of the Only Lawsuits podcast. We appreciate all the support from all our new global listeners, Finland, Australia, South Africa. Man, shout out to each of those new listeners out there. If you like what you see, leave some suggestions in the comments below. And until next time.
Peace.
Peace.